From the small servants' quarters behind the main house, Emeka, a middle-aged farmer with rough, calloused hands and a thoughtful face, could hear it all. The muffled cries of a young girl, the harsh slap of a hand, the chilling voice of a woman whose patience had long since burned away. "Why must you be so useless, Chica?" the woman shouted. "You are just like your mother, good for nothing." Welcome to Spiritual African Stories, the home of captivating African folktales, supernatural mysteries, and deeply emotional stories inspired by the heart of our culture. Here, every tale carries a spirit, stories of love, betrayal, power, and redemption that connect the physical and the spiritual worlds. Before we begin, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that will move your soul and stir your imagination. Nneka, the stepmother, stood in the tiled corridor of the house, her neatly tied wrapper shifting as she raised her hand again. The girl she struck, barely 15, thin as a shadow, stumbled back into the wall, clutching her cheek. A bowl of rice had spilled across the floor, scattering like white tears. "I said I was sorry," Chica whispered, her voice trembling. "The spoon just slipped. Do not talk back to me." Nneka's voice cracked like a whip. "You think I am your slave, eh? Every day, I work myself to death in this house, and you can't even do one thing right." From the living room, Benson, her husband and Chica's father, pretended not to hear. He sat stiffly on the sofa, staring at the blank TV screen, his fingers tapping nervously on his knee. He had long learned that interfering only made things worse. The house was quiet for a few seconds, then came the sound of another blow. And that was when Emeka could no longer stay silent. He dropped the cutlass he had been sharpening by the fence and stood. His little farm, a small plot where he grew vegetables for sale, bordered the family's compound. Through the spaces between the slats of the wooden fence, he could see flashes of movement. The woman's arm raised high, the girl cowering low, and the father sitting still like a ghost of himself. He walked toward the gate and called out softly, "Madam Nneka?" No answer. Only the girl's muffled sobs. "Madam Nneka," he repeated, louder this time. "Please, take it easy with the child. She's only a girl." The gate creaked open slightly. Nneka's angry face appeared in the gap, her wrapper damp with sweat. "Mind your business, Emeka," she snapped. "You think I need your advice? Go back to your farm." Emeka held his ground. "She's bleeding." "What did you say?" Her voice rose in defiance. "You are a farmer. You know nothing about raising a child." Emeka's eyes darkened. "I may be a farmer, madam, but I know cruelty when I see it." That sentence hung in the air like dust after a storm. Behind her, Chica trembled, pressing her hand against her face. The red mark on her cheek glistened under the porch light. She was staring at Emeka as though he were a miracle she didn't deserve to see. "Go back inside." Nneka barked at the girl, then turned to Emeka again. "You don't know this child. She is a curse in this house." Emeka's gaze softened as he looked past her at Chica. "No child is a curse," he said gently. "Maybe she just needs someone to love her right." Nneka's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "Love? You can come and love her if you want. Maybe then you'll understand what I go through every day with this stubborn goat." Emeka didn't flinch. He took a slow step closer to the gate, the fading sunlight outlining the deep lines on his face. "All right," he said quietly. "Don't hurt her, sell her to me." The words hit like a thunderclap. For a second, even the air seemed to stop moving. Benson, from inside the house, looked up in disbelief. Chica froze. Nneka blinked, unsure she had heard right. "What did you just say?" she asked, her tone now half amused, half shocked. "You heard me," Emeka replied, his eyes steady. "If she's such a burden to you, sell her to me. I'll take her to my house. She'll help me on the farm. You'll never have to see her again." Nneka's laughter was cold. "You think I am stupid? You want to take her away and make me look like a wicked woman to the neighbors?" "You don't need anyone to tell them that," Emeka said. "They can already hear the screams." Her face twisted with rage, but there was something else beneath it. Fear, maybe, or shame. The kind that makes people act even crueler. Benson finally stood up, voice trembling. "Emeka, please, this is a family matter." "A family matter?" Emeka turned to him sharply. "A child is crying for help under your roof, and you call it a family matter?" The silence that followed was heavy. The only sound was Chica's soft sobbing and the distant noise of cars passing beyond the walls. Then, without another word, Neka slammed the gate shut. That night, the rain came. The clouds gathered quickly, as they often do in Lekki. One moment the air was humid and still, the next it was roaring with thunder. Emeka couldn't sleep. Every crash of lightning reminded him of the girl's tear-streaked face. He lit his kerosene lamp and sat by the window of his small bungalow. The farm stretched out in the darkness, wet and silent. In the distance, he could still see the faint glow of Benson's house through the rain. He could almost hear the echoes of Neka's voice carried on the wind. He sighed and took out an old photograph from his drawer, a faded picture of a smiling girl about Chica's age, standing beside a woman with kind eyes. His daughter, his wife, both gone now, buried in a village far from here. The memory stabbed him like a blade he could never pull out. He whispered, "Emeka, if only I could have saved her." The storm raged harder. By morning, the sky had cleared, but the air still smelled of wet soil. Emeka went about tending his crops, but his mind was elsewhere. Around noon, as he was gathering cassava, he heard the faint sound of footsteps behind his fence again. Then, a whimper. He dropped the basket and walked quickly to the gate. When he opened it, he found Chica sitting in the mud, clutching her school bag to her chest. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder. Her knees were scraped. Her eyes, red and swollen, looked up at him helplessly. "Uncle Emeka," she whispered. "She said I don't belong here anymore." Emeka's heart broke. "Did she throw you out?" Chica nodded slowly. "She said I should go and live with my dead mother since I love her so much." He clenched his jaw. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he gently took the bag from her hands. "Come inside," he said. "You can stay here for now." The small farmhouse smelled of wood smoke and rain. It wasn't much, one bedroom, a small kitchen, and a sitting area with 2 chairs and a cracked table. But to Chica, it felt safer than anywhere she'd ever been. Emeka boiled some yam and gave her a plate. She ate quietly, her eyes darting around the room as though afraid she might wake up and find it gone. "Where is your father?" he asked softly. "I don't know," she said. "He went to work before the rain started yesterday. He doesn't talk to me anymore." Emeka nodded. "He's a weak man," he said under his breath. "What about your mother?" he asked after a moment. Chica's spoon paused. "She died when I was 8. They said she was sick, but I think—" Her voice trailed off. She looked down at the food, then whispered, "I think she was sad." Emeka's throat tightened. "Sad? Yes. She used to cry when she thought I was asleep. She said my father was changing, that he wasn't the man she married." He looked away. The ache in his chest deepened. "Do you remember her face?" "Yes," Chica said softly. "Sometimes I see her when I close my eyes." Days passed. Chica stayed with Emeka, helping him on the farm. She was quiet, hardworking, and gentle. At first, the neighbors gossiped, an old man and a young girl living alone. But when they saw her carrying vegetables to the market and Emeka treating her like a daughter, their whispers turned into quiet respect. One afternoon, Neka came to the gate. Her face was carefully composed, her wrapper neatly tied, but her eyes were hard. "So," she said coldly, "you really took her in." Emeka wiped his hands on a cloth and looked at her calmly. "You threw her out. She's my husband's daughter, not yours. You had no right." "I had every right," Emeka said. "I couldn't let her sleep in the rain." Neka folded her arms. "People are talking, you know. They say you bought her." He looked straight into her eyes. "Let them talk. At least now she's safe." For a moment, she said nothing. Then her tone softened. "Almost. You think you're a hero, Emeka. But you don't know that girl. She will bring you sorrow one day." He tilted his head slightly. "And you, madam, have already brought enough sorrow for both of you." Her mouth tightened. She turned and walked away. That night, Chica couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, listening to the frogs croak in the dark, and whispered to herself, "Why did he help me? Why would anyone want to buy me?" She turned to where Emeka slept in the next room. Through the open door, she could see him stirring, muttering in his sleep, a name, over and over again. "Emeka, Emeka." Chica frowned. She didn't know who that was, but the sorrow in his voice made her eyes sting. The next morning, as the sun rose over Lekki, Chica was outside fetching water when she saw something glinting in the soil near the fence. She bent down and dug it out. A small silver locket, old and rusted. When she opened it, she gasped. Inside was a faded photograph of a girl who looked almost exactly like her. She ran to Emeka. "Uncle, who is this?" Emeka froze when he saw it. His hands trembled as he took the locket. "Where did you find this?" "By the fence," she said. "She looks like me." He sat down slowly, his face pale. "That was my daughter," he whispered. "Her name was Emeka." Chika looked at him, confusion clouding her eyes. "What happened to her?" Emeka didn't answer. He just stared at the photograph, lost in a past too heavy to speak of. As the camera would fade to black, the narrator's voice, calm, deep, emotional, would close the first scene. They said kindness is a virtue. But sometimes, kindness hides a wound that never healed. In the quiet corners of Lekki, one farmer's mercy would soon unearth a truth buried too deep for peace. Morning light spilled gently over Emeka's compound, washing the damp earth in a pale gold. Dew clung to the leaves of his okra plants, and the air still smelled faintly of the night's rain. Chika was outside, sweeping the veranda. Her movements were careful, almost ceremonial, as though every stroke of the broom was an apology to the world for existing. Inside, Emeka sat at the wooden table, the silver locket lying open in front of him. The photograph of his late daughter, Emeka, seemed to stare back at him through time itself. He could not look away. "Uncle," Chika said softly from the doorway, "do you want more tea?" He didn't answer right away. His mind was far away, caught in a place where memory and guilt walked hand in hand. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "You remind me of her. My Emeka." Chika hesitated, unsure whether to feel flattered or afraid. "She looked like me?" "Yes," he said. "So much that it hurts to look at you sometimes." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "What happened to her?" Emeka drew a long breath. "That is a story for another day." Days slipped by, marked by simple rhythms. Farming, cooking, small talk that avoided the heaviness that hung between them. Yet beneath the calm surface, questions multiplied like shadows. Why had he really wanted to buy her? Why did he keep her mother's name out of his mouth, but her likeness close to his heart? Sometimes at night, Chika would wake to the sound of him talking in his sleep again. She would hear fragments, names, pleas, the sound of a man trying to rewrite the past in his dreams. "Emeka, run. Don't go to the water, please. I should have been there." Each time, Chika would sit silently on her mat, hugging her knees, wondering who he had been before life turned him into this quiet, broken man. The village around them began to notice the change. At the market, women whispered while sorting tomatoes. "The farmer took that girl in, you know. They say she's the stepdaughter of Benson, that man whose wife beats her like a drum. Maybe the farmer pities her. Or maybe he wants something else." Rumors spread like wildfire, the kind that burns faster than truth can walk. When Emeka came to sell his produce, he could feel eyes following him, but he ignored them. He was used to gossip. In Lekki's border communities, people loved stories more than facts. Still, something about the whispers unsettled Chika. She was afraid that her presence might be staining him. That evening, as they shelled groundnuts by the doorway, she said quietly, "Uncle, maybe I should go back home." He looked up sharply. "Home? To my father's house." Emeka's gaze softened. "Is that what you call it? A house where no one defends you?" She looked down. "He's still my father." "Yes," Emeka said, "and I am not trying to take that from you. But promise me you will not go back there until you are ready." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Ready for what?" "To forgive him," Emeka replied. "And that takes time." One afternoon, as the sun scorched the tin roofs, a visitor arrived. It was Benson. He looked smaller than before, thinner, his shirt sticking to his skin, his eyes carrying the weight of sleepless nights. Emeka saw him at the gate and wiped his hands on a rag. "You came." Benson nodded stiffly. "I heard she's with you. She's safe here." "I can see that." Benson's eyes moved around the tidy compound. "But people are talking. They say you bought my daughter." Emeka didn't flinch. "I told your wife that because she was about to break her bones." Those were words meant to stop her hand, not to buy your child. Benson's lips trembled. "She says you humiliated her." "I said what needed to be said." For a long moment, they stood in silence. Only the buzz of insects filled the gap between them. Then Benson's shoulders sagged. I failed my daughter, he said quietly. Yes, Emeka said, not cruelly, just honestly. I want to see her. She's inside. When Chika stepped out, she froze at the sight of him. He looked different, older somehow. She wanted to run to him, but her body didn't move. He reached out as though to touch her shoulder, but stopped halfway. Chika, he said, voice breaking. I'm sorry. Her eyes filled. For what? For not protecting you. She shook her head. You watched her hurt me, Papa. You did nothing. He swallowed hard. I thought keeping quiet would keep peace. But peace built on silence is just another kind of war. Tears welled in her eyes. I used to think you hated me. I never hated you, he said. I hated myself. For a moment, it felt like forgiveness might bloom between them. But before it could, a sharp female voice sliced through the air. Benson. Neka stood outside the gate, her arms folded, fury radiating off her. So this is where you are? You left the shop to come to this man's house. Emeka's jaw tightened. You're not welcome here. Who are you to say that? She snapped. You think you can steal another man's family? Chika stepped back, trembling. Benson moved to calm his wife, but she pushed him aside. Everyone knows what you're doing. Neka shouted. A grown man living alone with a young girl. You think people are blind? Her words struck like stones. Emeka's face darkened, but he held his temper. Say what you want, Neka. I know my conscience. Then explain why this girl wears your late daughter's necklace. The world seemed to stop. Benson turned to Chika, his eyes widening as he saw the silver locket around her neck. Where did you get that? He asked. I found it, Chika whispered. Neka scoffed. You see? Even the dead cannot rest because of you, Emeka. Maybe you brought her here to replace the one you lost. Emeka's voice dropped to a whisper. You should leave now. But Neka kept going, feeding on her own anger. Tell us, farmer, what really happened to your daughter? That question sliced deeper than she could have imagined. Emeka's expression changed, the calmness cracked, and something haunted slipped through. Enough, he said, turning his back to her. Go home. Benson grabbed his wife's arm. Neka, please. She resisted at first, then pulled free. This isn't over, she hissed, before storming away. That night, the compound was painfully silent. Chika sat by the doorway, staring at the necklace in her hands. Uncle, she said softly, is it true? Am I wearing your daughter's necklace? Emeka nodded slowly. It belonged to her. You found it by the fence because I buried it there. Why? Because I couldn't bear to keep it, but I couldn't throw it away either. What happened to her? He looked toward the window, where the moonlight poured in like liquid silver. She drowned, he said at last. Chika gasped. How? It was my fault. He told her then, voice trembling, eyes fixed on something far away. Years ago, when Emeka was 12, he had taken her to the stream near their old village. He left her playing by the bank while he went to fetch tools from the house. When he returned, she was gone. The villagers said she slipped, that the water took her quickly. But Emeka never forgave himself for leaving her alone. I searched that water until my hands bled, he said. They never found her body. From that day, I stopped living. I only existed. Chika's eyes filled. I'm sorry. He smiled sadly. You don't need to be. Maybe God sent you so I could breathe again. Weeks passed. Their lives settled into a fragile rhythm again, tending the farm, cooking, speaking little but understanding much. Yet under that peace, something still shifted. Sometimes Chika would catch Emeka staring at her with an expression she couldn't name, a mix of love, fear, and memory. Sometimes she would find him sitting by the fence at night, whispering to the dark as if it could answer. And sometimes, when the wind blew from the direction of the marshes, she could swear she heard laughter, faint, childlike, echoing through the night. She asked him once, Do you hear that? He smiled faintly. It's just the wind. But his hands were shaking. In Lekki's gossip circles, the story grew wilder. Some said Emeka had buried his wife's jewelry, and the spirit returned in the form of the girl. Others claimed the girl was his long-lost daughter, who somehow survived. Chika overheard these whispers at the market and felt her heart twist. She wasn't a ghost. She was real. But every rumor felt like a shadow creeping closer. One day, while cleaning, she opened an old wooden chest in Emeka's room. Inside were letters wrapped in a cloth. The top one was addressed to my beloved Emeka. She hesitated, then unfolded it. If I could trade my breath for yours, I would. I hear your laughter in every rainstorm. I see your face in every child that passes my gate. Maybe one day, when mercy finds me, I will forgive myself enough to love again." Tears blurred her eyes. She slipped the letter back and closed the chest. That night, she left the necklace on the table. When Emeka woke and saw it there, he knew she had read the letter. He picked up the necklace, held it tightly, and whispered, "Forgive me, Emeka." Then, from outside, a sound broke the dawn silence. The sharp knock of police batons against his gate. "Open up. Police." Chika's heart froze. Emeka went pale. The gate rattled again. "Mr. Emeka Okiri, you are under investigation for harboring a minor against her guardian's consent." Neka's doing. Emeka closed his eyes. So this is how peace ends. Narrator's voice, low and haunting. In trying to protect the innocent, he had awakened the ghosts of his own guilt. But the truth has a way of breaking through silence. And before it's done, no one in Lekki will sleep easy. The banging grew louder. The voice outside turned from official to impatient. "Last warning. Open this gate before we break it." Chika clutched the hem of her dress. Her heart thudded like a trapped bird. "Uncle Emeka, what do they want? Did we do something wrong?" Emeka stood slowly, shoulders heavy. "Not we, my child. Just me." He crossed the small room, every step deliberate, and unlatched the gate. Two policemen in dark uniforms pushed through. Their boots trailed the smell of wet dust and diesel. Behind them, a small crowd of curious neighbors pressed closer, eyes bright with the thrill of scandal. At the edge of the road stood Neka, arms folded, her expression half satisfied, half defensive. Benson was beside her, looking more broken than angry. "Mr. Emeka Okiri?" the taller officer asked. "Yes," he said quietly. "You are being brought in for questioning. The woman here," he nodded toward Neka, "claims you abducted her stepdaughter." Emeka's voice was steady. "She was thrown out. I gave her shelter. Then you will have the chance to explain that at the station." The officer gestured toward the gate. "Come peacefully." Chika rushed forward. "No, he didn't take me. Please, sir, he saved me." The officer sighed. "Young lady, you'll come too." Neka's voice sliced through the murmuring crowd. "You see? I warned you all. That man isn't what he seems." Benson lowered his eyes. Inside the police van, the air was thick with silence. Emeka sat beside Chika, his wrists loosely cuffed. Through the barred window, he could see Lekki sliding past, the half-built estates, the street hawkers, the world moving as if nothing in it had changed. He said softly, "Whatever happens, Chika, remember what I told you." She turned to him, trembling. "To forgive." He nodded. "Even when forgiveness feels impossible." At the station, the smell of sweat, ink, and stale paper filled the room. An inspector with a bald head and weary eyes read through Neka's written statement. "So," he said, "you're claiming this man lured your stepdaughter away under the pretense of employment?" "I didn't lure her," Emeka interrupted calmly. "She was being beaten." The inspector raised a hand. "You'll get your turn, sir." He turned to Chika. "You're old enough to speak for yourself. Did he harm you?" Chika shook her head fiercely. "No. He took care of me." The inspector leaned back. Then why did your stepmother come to us?" Neka's lips curled. "Because the man said he wanted to buy her." "Who talks like that if his mind is clean?" A murmur rippled through the officers in the room. The word "by" hung heavy. Emeka swallowed hard. It was a figure of speech. "I said it to stop her from beating the girl to death." The inspector studied him for a long moment, then exhaled. "This is one of those domestic storms that blow dust in every direction." He scribbled something in his notebook. "Mr. Okiri, until we verify her age and guardianship, you'll stay here tonight." Chika's voice cracked. "Please, don't leave him here." The inspector's tone softened. "We're not hurting him, young lady. Go home with your parents for now." "I can't," she whispered. "That house isn't safe." The inspector hesitated, then looked at Benson. "Sir, can you guarantee her safety?" Benson's mouth opened, then closed. I will try." "Trying is not enough," Emeka said quietly. But the officer had already signaled for him to be led away. The holding cell was small, with peeling paint and one weak bulb that flickered like a tired heartbeat. Emeka sat on the floor, his back against the wall. Around him, other men muttered about theft, debts, and life's unfairness. He stared at his hands, rough, cracked, the hands of a man who had sown 1,000 seeds but could not harvest peace. When the lights dimmed for the night, he heard a whisper from the next cell. "Farmer," a voice said. "You're the one they brought in for a girl, eh?" Emeka didn't answer. The voice chuckled. "Don't mind them. The world always misunderstands good men." Emeka sighed. Maybe because good men make bad choices too. Outside, Chika refused to go home. She sat on a bench near the station's gate until dawn. The sky turned from gray to pink, but she didn't move. Benson came to her, eyes red. "Chika, come home. Please." "Home," she said softly. "You mean with her?" He looked away. Neka went to her sister's place. "She's angry, but she'll calm down." "She will never calm down," Chika said. "She hates me because I remind her of Mama." He knelt beside her. "I didn't know how to love after she died. That's not your fault." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Then why didn't you stop her?" He had no answer. Later that day, a social welfare officer arrived, a kind woman in her 40s named Mrs. Ijeoma Okafor. She interviewed Chika gently, taking notes. When Chika described the beating, the woman's eyes darkened. "I see," Mrs. Ijeoma said. "We'll handle this carefully." "The man, Emeka, what does he mean to you?" Chika thought for a long moment. "He feels like a second chance." The woman smiled faintly. "Then maybe he deserves one too." By evening, Emeka was released on bail pending review. When he stepped out of the station, Chika was waiting by the gate. She ran to him without hesitation, throwing her arms around him. He froze, then slowly embraced her. "You shouldn't have waited here all night," he murmured. She pulled back and looked at him. "You waited years for forgiveness. I can wait one night for you." He managed a weary smile. They walked home together in silence. The streets glistened after a light rain. The smell of fried plantain drifted from a nearby stall, mixing with the faint salt of the lagoon breeze. When they reached the gate, Emeka stopped. "You shouldn't stay here much longer, Chika. People's tongues don't tire easily." She shook her head. "Let them talk. I know the truth." "The truth," he said quietly, "is not always enough to protect us." That night, as thunder rolled again over Lekki, Emeka sat by his window. On the table lay the locket, open beside a small photograph of his late wife. Chika had gone to sleep, curled on the mat in the next room. He whispered to the night, "If mercy has a price, let it be me who pays it." The next morning brought another visitor, Mrs. Ijeoma. She sat with Emeka on the veranda while Chika washed vegetables nearby. "Mr. Okari," she said, "I read your file. You lost your wife and daughter 10 years ago in a drowning incident." Emeka nodded. "Yes." She hesitated. "Forgive me, but do you ever think you took in this girl to heal that wound?" He looked at her steadily. "Maybe. But if kindness comes from pain, does that make it less pure?" She smiled sadly. "No. It makes it more human." They sat in silence for a moment, watching Chika laugh softly as she rinsed the greens. It was the first real laughter to touch the compound in years. "Do you intend to keep caring for her?" Mrs. Ijeoma asked. "If she'll let me." But peace in Lekki never lasts long. That evening, Benson arrived alone. His face was drawn, guilt heavy in his eyes. "Neka packed her things," he said. "She left me." Emeka looked at him. "Sometimes leaving is its own punishment." Benson nodded. "She also told everyone she'll make sure you never see Chika again." "Let her try," Emeka said. Benson's voice cracked. "I came to say thank you for doing what I couldn't." Emeka clasped his shoulder. "Then be the father she needs now. Start over." As days turned to weeks, the noise around them faded. Chika began attending school again, with help from Mrs. Ijeoma's office. Emeka returned to his farm. The world seemed to breathe easier. Until one afternoon, when Chika didn't come home. Emeka waited an hour, then two. By dusk, panic clawed at him. He searched the roads, the small kiosks, even the stream beyond the farms. The same kind of stream that had taken Emeka years ago. Then he saw it. Her school bag, lying by the water's edge. "Chika!" he shouted, voice breaking. "Chika!" No answer. Only the sound of frogs and rippling water. He plunged into the stream, calling her name again and again. The memories hit him like waves. Emeka, the laughter, the splash, the silence that followed. "Not again," he whispered. "Please, not again." Then, faintly, a cry. "Uncle Emeka." He turned. Farther down the bank, Chika clung to a branch, her leg caught in the mud. He waded toward her, fighting the current, until he reached her and pulled her free. They both collapsed on the bank, soaked, gasping. He held her close. Why, Chica? Why were you here? Through tears, she pointed to the water. I dropped the locket. I didn't want to lose it. Emeka laughed through his sobs, a sound full of both pain and relief. You could have drowned for a ghost's necklace. She looked up at him. It wasn't for her. It was for you. When they returned home, he placed the locket on the table and closed it. We'll keep her in our hearts, not in the water, he said. That night, as the rain began again, Chica slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Emeka sat awake, watching the lamp flicker. He realized that mercy had indeed demanded its price. Not his freedom, not his reputation, but his willingness to live again. He whispered, "Thank you, child, for reminding me that even broken men can still protect something good." He thought he was saving her life, but in truth, she was saving his. In a world quick to judge and slow to understand, sometimes mercy is not a weakness. It is the only kind of courage left. The morning after the storm smelled like wet clay and smoke. Emeka stood on the veranda, staring at the soft mist rolling over the edge of Lekki's farmlands. The world had quieted, but not in peace. It was the kind of silence that follows after everything has been said, yet nothing has been resolved. In the next room, Chica stirred awake. Her voice came weakly. "Uncle Emeka, did you sleep at all?" He turned toward her, offering a faint smile. "Sleep isn't a friend of old men, my dear. It visits only when it wants." She sat up, hair disheveled, her school uniform still damp from yesterday's ordeal. "I dreamed of Mama," she whispered. She said thank you. Emeka's gaze softened. Then maybe that dream was real enough. He handed her a bowl of hot pap and fried plantain. "Eat. You have a big day ahead." "What day?" "Today, the Social Welfare Office finalizes your guardianship papers." Her eyes widened. "You mean, I get to stay? If they approve it." She leaped up and hugged him tightly. "They will. They must." He chuckled softly, a sound that carried both hope and fear. Later that morning, Mrs. Igioma arrived in a modest government vehicle. She stepped out, her folder pressed against her chest, expression unreadable. "Mr. Okari," she greeted. "May we speak privately before we head to the office?" Emeka nodded and led her to the shaded side of the house. "Something happened last night," she began carefully. "Your case drew attention. A journalist from the Lekki Tribune heard about the police incident and wants to publish a piece." Emeka frowned. "What kind of piece?" "The kind that turns truth into entertainment," she said. "Headlines sell better than humanity these days." He sighed. "Then let them write what they want. The truth doesn't hide forever." She looked at him long and hard. "You say that like a man who's used to losing." "Maybe," he said softly. "But not this time." At the social office, Chica sat beside him, nervously twirling her fingers. Across the desk sat a panel of 3 officials, their expressions stiff but not unkind. Mrs. Igioma stood near the corner, watching. "Mr. Okari," the eldest official said, "we've reviewed your application and the circumstances under which the child came into your care." Emeka nodded silently. "We have also interviewed her biological father, Mr. Benson Nwosu." Chica's breath caught. The man continued. "While we cannot legally revoke his parentage, Mr. Benson has signed a letter of relinquishment, allowing you to act as her guardian for the next 2 years, subject to review." Chica gasped. He agreed. Emeka's shoulders dropped in quiet relief. "Then it's done." The woman on the right smiled faintly. "It's done. Congratulations, Mr. Okari. You are now Chica's legal guardian." Outside, the afternoon sun cut through the clouds. Chica turned to him, eyes shining. "You see, I told you." Emeka smiled, a deep, honest smile that reached his eyes. "Yes, you did. You always believed more than I did." She grinned. "That's because you worry too much." He laughed, the sound echoing down the walkway. For the first time in years, it wasn't a laugh that carried pain behind it. But fate, as always, had one more test left. That evening, as they returned home, a man waited by the gate, tall, clean-shaven, with a journalist's notepad in hand. "Good evening, sir," the man said politely. "My name is William Zokon. I'm a reporter with the Lekki Tribune. I wanted to speak with you about the girl you rescued." Emeka studied him. "And why should I let you?" "Because stories like yours remind people that there's still good in this city. I promise. No scandal, No exaggeration. Just truth. Chica tugged at Emeka's sleeve. Uncle, maybe he's different. William smiled warmly. May I come in? After a long pause, Emeka nodded. 1 cup of tea. No cameras. They sat beneath the mango tree in the compound. Williams took notes while Emeka spoke, not of pity, but of choice, of how compassion sometimes comes dressed as trouble. He told him everything. The day at the roadside, the confrontation, the police, the night by the stream. When Williams finally closed his notebook, he said quietly, Thank you. I think people need this. A reminder that mercy isn't weakness. As he left, Chica asked, Do you think people will believe him? Emeka looked toward the horizon. Belief is not what saves the world, Chica. It's what we do when no one's watching. A week later, the story was published. Headline: Farmer risks reputation to save abused girl in Lekki. The article spread across social media, gathering thousands of comments, some praising, others suspicious. In a world hungry for scandal, truth was a quiet visitor. But amidst the noise, one comment stood out. If every man had the heart of this farmer, maybe our daughters would be safer. When Chica read it aloud, Emeka smiled faintly. Then maybe it was worth it. Months passed. The dry season came with its golden dust and lazy afternoons. Chica had grown taller. Her laughter filled the compound. She sometimes helped Emeka on the farm, though he always found excuses to give her lighter work. Uncle Emeka, she teased one day, you think I'm still that little girl you rescued? He smirked. You will always be that girl, just taller and more stubborn now. She laughed, shaking her head. One Sunday evening, they were visited by Benson. He looked healthier, humbler. I came to see my daughter, he said softly. Chica hesitated, unsure. Emeka stepped aside. You don't need my permission, Benson. Just her forgiveness. Benson approached her slowly. Chica, I was blind. I thought silence was peace. But I see now, silence is just cowardice. Tears welled in her eyes. You should have protected me. I know, he said, and I will spend the rest of my life making it right, if you'll let me. She said nothing, but after a moment, she took his hand. It was a fragile bridge, but it was a start. That night, Emeka watched from the veranda as father and daughter sat under the mango tree, talking quietly. The moonlight caught Chica's hair, and for a moment, she looked exactly like his lost Emeka. He smiled to himself. The world gives back in strange ways. Mrs. Igioma's voice came from the gate. She had stopped by on her way home. You did well, Mr. Okari. He turned to her. I didn't do much. I just opened a door. Sometimes that's all it takes, she said. They stood together in silence, watching the two figures beneath the tree, one man seeking forgiveness, one girl finding it. As the night deepened, a soft wind rustled the leaves. Emeka looked up at the sky. Somewhere, in a place memory could not touch, he imagined his wife smiling. He whispered, when the dust settles, love is all that remains. In a city where kindness is often mistaken for weakness, one man chose mercy and paid its price. But in saving a child, he found his own redemption. The world may forget the farmer's name, but his story will linger, whispered between fathers and daughters, retold by hearts that still believe in second chances. As the screen fades to gold and the echoes of their voices drift into silence, we're reminded that mercy is never weakness. It's the quiet strength that rebuilds what cruelty has broken. In a world quick to judge and slow to forgive, one farmer's kindness proved that compassion still changes lives. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Like, share, and subscribe Spiritual African Stories for more powerful African stories that remind us what it truly means to be human. Until next time, keep believing in kindness, even when the world forgets its name.